So we recently came across this website known as IQFi that appears to contain some of the most hilarious progressive opinions out there. However, it's so amusing that it's possible that it could be very well done satire. And I wanted to look at one of these articles, but I'm going to argue that either way, it doesn't really matter because it helps us politically if it's indistinguishable from the real deal. And I'll explain that after reading this rather hilarious article titled, "Encourage Women to Smell Their Poop to Be More Inclusive to Trans Women." I mean, what a headline.
That sounds like a parody headline, surely.
Well, some women have a hole where their penis used to be. That hole often shares a microbiome with the colon, creating a distinct transitioning odour. I mean, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
In solidarity with trans women, this month you can make a difference by putting your olfactory system to use while going number 2. I'm going to have fun with this. Yes, it's not a joke. We are sincerely asking all women to please spend more time smelling their poo during bathroom breaks and to critically examine what many of our gender have to endure as part of the cost of bottom surgery. It is time for us all to do the work to truly empathise with the sights, sounds and smells endured by every member of our large and beautiful gender community, including those with distinct transitioning odours.
There is literally no way this is not a parody. There is literally no way.
Well, one might hope. If this is genuine, I do despair for our civilization.
Yeah.
It goes on to say, the social taboo around frank discussions of smells is already quite strong, but doubly so when it comes to ones that come from male to female neo-vaginas. That's a term I've not heard before, a neo-vagina, but there we go. If you are
I think it's from The Matrix.
If you are a regular on advice and trans subreddits, you don't usually have to wander too far down the feed before coming across anonymous posts carefully prodding for advice on neo-vaginal smells like this one. And this is a real post, by the way. I did find it, and I did a little bit of investigative journalism, I know. It was such a hardship. And I'm reading from a quote from this Reddit post that they cite in the article now. One night I was going to go down on her, so she washed her bits before she came into the bedroom and she laid on my bed. I was about a few inches from her face when I noticed a foul smell that can be best described as stale urine, cheesy and a bit like feces.
So basically what this article smells like.
I've heard of post-op M2F or male to female smells, but I've read most people saying they go away quickly after a transition. Anyway, I backed away because I was so put off by that smell. She kept asking what's wrong, and I finally broke down and told her what was wrong. She was confused and kept smelling herself, saying she didn't smell anything. She said she just washed too. It had been a fight between me and her, and she's self-conscious about it. I asked if it could be an infection or her hygiene habits, lifestyle or diet, because I know those things can affect the smell of the vagina. Lovely conversation, I know. This is what you come here for, isn't it? She told me that's
Join
just...
the Lotus eaters this. Have in-depth intellectual conversations.
Oh, yeah. She told me that's just the way her vagina and all vaginas smell. She told me it didn't smell like what I described it as, and it just smelled like vagina. I tried asking my mother about what it could be. Imagine that conversation. And she couldn't give me any answers because she's not informed on this topic. I tried asking my gay cousin, but she didn't have any answers either. I mean, the fact that this is getting brought up, just the whole family is in on this conversation, if it's, of course, genuine. Well, the Reddit post probably is
genuine, yeah.
I was wondering if anyone in here could give me any advice on this. Do transgender women just have a different smell down there than cis women? Is that her natural smell? If so, what can I do to get used to the smell? And then the rest of the article carries on, but you get the idea that this is a genuine thing. Whether the article's genuine or not is not a question that I think we'll ever be able to answer. I mean, you tried, but yes.
Well, the article smells like BS, that's all I'm going to say.
Of course, but is it satire, do you reckon? You're saying yes. Well, we obviously need to know what is true and what is not, what is satire and what isn't. I think being able to orient yourself properly in the world to channel Dr. Peterson is dependent on having a good sense of what is real and what isn't.
And there are other articles on this site, by the way, which we've looked at before the podcast, which are much less clear-cut, I think.
Yes, and I'm going to cover those as well. So to use the example of some other satire, the Babylon Bee here, which of course does great work, it's entirely obvious that it's satirical though, isn't it? I mean, that's why it's funny when someone gets stung by the bee, that you can call them stupid. You're like, well, how did you fall for that? Yeah. So here we have an example. Is Hillary Clinton sending hitmen after you? Look for these troubling signs, which of course is playing on the language of clickbaity articles, like look for these troubling signs, or 10 reasons such and such, that sort of thing. And of course, the edited thumbnail image of Hillary Clinton looking like a shady sort of alleyway stabber.
I don't know why you're stereotyping the hoodie.
I'm sorry, I live in Britain, but if you wear a hoodie, there's a 99% chance you might stab someone.
I think I've seen you wearing a hoodie before.
No, you haven't.
No, have I not?
Fake news.
Interesting. Okay.
I'll never wear a hoodie, for goodness sake. But anyway, moving on. In the case of this IQFi website, it's not entirely clear, like the Babylon Bee, whether it is actually true. So it's worthwhile emphasising the fact that humour in politics is very important. There's nothing more damaging, after all, to someone's self-esteem and their confidence than being made fun of. And I think that leftists in particular are very sensitive to this. Why not use this to our advantage?
Yeah.
I mean, if they lose their minds, look like even more of an idiot than they do already, then all the more benefit to us.
Well, exposing an extreme degree of neurosis or neurotic personality in your interlocutors is a very good way to discredit.
You don't really have to try very hard either.
No.
I mean, it's you see all of these cases of speakers in the United States having perfectly civil discussions, and then all the progressives come in shouting and screaming with horns and refusing to discuss things like civilized adults. So yes, debating with these kinds of people is often pretty much impossible. Even if they are, receptive to the ideas, that the frame of reference is quite often so far off that you're not going to be able to get through of them, good faith or not.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is make fun of them. That's yes, be mean to them. That's my suggestion.
Well, be jocular at least, because it's a sign of good and stable psyche that someone can take a joke, that they can engage with humour, that they can even give as good as they get. And when someone fails that test, it's a good sign, and it's actually often a sign of male bonding, for example, in work gangs and military units and so on, that if someone can't take a joke, they very quickly become the black sheep and the outsider. If
and
they
it's
can,
exactly that I'm trying to capitalise on here.
Exactly.
And of course, there is the added advantage of, with political discussions, quite often there's lots of specialist language being used. And if you're trying to convince, normal people that don't follow politics, well, everyone has an intuitive understanding of humour, don't they? If you're making fun of someone and they're not taking it well, you can say, well, they're not a good sport about it.
But in male bonding, I do want to say that it's not purely negative. It's not purely just, the person who can't take a joke is kicked out. It's that if you pass that and you show that you can take a joke, you're actually accepted. And so it's a positive thing to prove and improve the bonding between the people involved in the task.
There's also a sort of implicit status element to it, in that if you're making fun of something, it's showing that you at least perceive yourself as higher in the social hierarchy, because you're so unthreatened by the interlocutor, as you put it, that you can make fun of them rather than addressing that ideas properly. And therefore, it sets things up in other people's minds that you at least perceive yourself as being.
It can be used as a status thing in that way, but I also think that there's a lot of cross-hierarchy humour in British culture, at least.
Oh, of course, yeah. But yes, sometimes we do get a bit of flack for making fun of otherwise serious things, and I can certainly understand that, because a lot of the things are serious, but sometimes you've got to have a bit of fun and point and laugh at stuff, because it's always beneficial. And
the joyless side always loses in the long run.
Yes, and particularly with progressives, there's so much fertile ground for comedy that it's so difficult to resist the urge a lot of the time.
Yeah, we find a dozen things to laugh at every day.
It's true.
Least.
And I would like to bring up a bit of a personal anecdote to show just how effective humour can be. So going back many, many years ago, I was sort of left-leaning but still anti-woke. And I came across Gavin McInnes. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah. I don't follow him, but I know who he is.
But yeah, he sort of put comedy first and foremost in his political commentary. And although I was left-leaning, it made me a lot more receptive to his ideas than I would have otherwise been, because I was just like, well, he's joking, you know. Maybe it's a bit of an old school idea now, because
but isn't that
everything is political.
Isn't that a bit like Count Dankula, for example, massaging far-right talking points through his pug?
But if people are already on board with that, then they're lost to sanity, aren't they? They're a foregone conclusion. But yes, and through that humour, slowly I became more and more receptive. Now I'm like a free marketeer, can get more right-wing on economics, and I'm socially conservative. So thanks to that, thanks to a bit of humour, it allowed me to entertain ideas I wouldn't have otherwise. And here I am now, delivering things that might even put Gavin McInnes to shame.
On a good day, perhaps.
No, I'm being too kind to myself. Yeah. So yes. And the fact of this isn't lost on the powers that be, of course.
Yeah.
Look at this article here from the European Commission, far-right extremist use of humour. And of course, other people do use humour as well, but it's trying to build this association with political extremism and humour, because humour is an effective political tool.
Yeah.
And I don't think it gets talked about
very
enough.
well.
Yes. Well, have you seen like leftist memes? They're just these massive walls of text
blocks, yeah.
Yeah, they just don't get it, do they? So there's also another example here from The Guardian, hiding in plain sight, how the alt-right is weaponising irony to spread fascism.
Oh, no.
Obviously, like things like the Trump Pepe memes, that's not trying to spread fascism, is it? I mean, if they're in favour of Trump, I don't think they're in favour of fascism. Funnily enough, I know, controversial opinion, but yes, left-wing outlets, globalist establishment outlets have been trying to attack humour in politics because it makes fun of them. They are the established powers.
Yes.
And they're the ones that have face to lose.
But having said that, as Jordan Peterson has said many a time, it's when the tyrant starts to execute the court jester, that's when you know he's really crossed the line. And that's basically what the establishment is doing here by trying to suppress humour and people who make jokes and make fun of them.
Absolutely. So part of the failure to acknowledge this is why conservatives lose by design, which coincidentally is a very good article on our website from Hugo, which breaks down all the reasons why conservatives set themselves up to lose. And I think that one of the reasons they set themselves up to lose is that they take themselves too seriously. They don't embrace humour. They don't poke fun and seem charismatic. They're dry, boring, serious. And I think that that's a political paradigm from a bygone era, really.
Absolutely.
And I think it needs to die to be successful. If you want to be new, exciting, get young people on board, well, you can't be stuffy, old and boring. And I think Hugo goes into lots of detail about lots of other things, but this is definitely worth checking out on our website.
Yeah.
So it's moving on to why this is a good strategy to have this satire that exists, that's indistinguishable from real beliefs, is that no one really knows what's true and what is fake. And this is actually the strategy of Vladislav Surkov, who you're familiar with, formerly one of Putin's most senior advisors, and one of the people who are sort of constructed Putin's strategy to maintain power, and how he's been a prominent figure in Russian politics, about 20 years now, almost over.
And his background is in postmodern theatre.
Yes.
From which he became essentially a mastermind of propaganda.
Exactly. And there are lots of lessons to be learnt from this. I'm going to go through some of these. So he wished to manipulate the Russian population to make them uncertain of what is true and what is not, and thus maximise power, as no one knew what was an act and what was actually genuine.
No one knew how to act because they didn't know what was happening.
Yes.
So they weren't sure enough of what was going on to be able to then say, so therefore I must do this.
So yes, he used money to influence a whole array of differing political groups, from anti-fascists to neo-Nazis to human rights groups and opposition parties to President Putin. And he also let it be known that he was doing this, which, might be a bit surprising.
But it means that if you then see an opposition group and you think, oh, they're really good, or at least you've been told, that Surkov and co are funding the opposition groups. So you're like, well, maybe this is just controlled opposition. So
you don't know what is real and what is fake.
Exactly.
And that means the opposition to your power base is always constantly confused. They don't know what's real, what is not. And therefore real power can be exercised sort of behind closed doors in this smoke screen of lack of clarity. And this is something that is sort of the political paradigm of the day. This is how power is won and lost in modern politics to a large extent.
Yeah, but it's very clever. It's almost casting a fog of war over normal, everyday politics.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, isn't politics war by other means?
Well, if you believe Clausewitz, then yes. You could say war is politics by other means. That's how it's usually phrased.
Until we understand this fact, we're not going to win any culture wars, I don't think. And this is really important. I know I've tempted you in with some lowbrow titling.
Not impressed.
But I've given you a proper lesson in political strategy now. So it's for your own good, I promise. It's like eating your vegetables.
All right, Grandpa.
But yes, armed with this new information, let's have a look at some of these other articles to see whether this website is truly an asset to us. So this next one is titled, "Please Stop Asking Transracial Folks These Questions." And it goes on to say, offensive questions often come from people's deep attachment to the ideas of race, identity being linked to biological essentialism.
Yes, so I would say that this is fake, not because of the way it's phrased. I think it's cleverer than the last one, but it's fake because the mainstream in left thought has not reached the transracial barrier yet. That's that's widely seen as a step beyond at the moment. It might change, but at the moment, I think that's beyond. So I'd say
I think this is kind of preempting the trends, isn't it?
Yeah.
It seems to me that whoever's written this has a knowledge of the political climate and is estimating the direction through creating articles.
They're trying to sort of just be one step beyond and win the game by being more extreme than the extremists.
And I imagine that they're probably going to get genuine progressives on board with stuff like this as well.
Well, they're making the arguments, generally speaking, in the right way for the constituency they're targeting.
It's sort of laden in the language as well, which is what makes it so convincing. It's not like the Babylon Bee where it's difficult to tell. You can also move on to your child, a far-right extremist, 11 early radicalization signs.
Well, I would like to say this is satire, but actually there have been articles, many from legit publications, which are this kind of thing.
Yes.
So,
I'm pretty sure there's one from the EU that had similar things, just like...
Yeah, and major American publications as well.
So some of the reasons that your child might be radicalized, using archives and archiving news articles. Well, we do that all the time. We're already beyond the pale, apparently. Preoccupation with physical fitness, nutrition and exercise. Being thin, extremist now.
You're right, Josh.
Yes, I'm soft and flabby moderate. Wants to or already works with artificial intelligence. Yes, if you work with artificial intelligence, you are an extremist.
Google is right-wing extremists, okay.
Exaggerated interest in history, country, culture, tradition, the Constitution.
Ooh dear.
Unhealthy preoccupation with the other F word, freedom.
Okay, now it's standing more like satire.
Yes, and the funniest of all...
But that's actually a tweet from CBC News, which is Canada's BBC, saying the word has become common among far-right groups.
This is to do with the truckers' protest, isn't it? It's ridiculous. And then the final point is a PewDiePie-style haircut. That makes you an extremist.
Oh, goddamn.
It's a pretty normal haircut for people to have.
No, I don't have that haircut. It's longer on top, you see.
I slick mine back rather than to the side. Therefore, I'm safe. So yes, another one is the coming death of crypto will spark the rise of fascism, which crypto not doing well at the minute. I haven't seen many fascists on the streets yet. They argue to crypto bros, e-money is far more than an investment. And when it all inevitably comes crashing down, they'll run, not walk, to fascism.
So this article seems to me like it could almost be written by an AI. And the reason I say that is because it's like, pick two things that are big news generators, that garner a lot of attention. Well, crypto's in the news quite a lot and quite popular with a certain culture. And fascism obviously is in the news quite a lot and popular with a certain culture. So it's like, pick up two things and then bring them together. And that's this kind of article.
Well, they actually say they have submission guidelines on their website, and they say we quite like articles where you combine two interesting
there we go.
topics. So they explicitly state it.
Yeah.
So this next one is even better.
So that's just search algorithm hacking. Sorry.
7 TikTok dances you can do to save Roe v. Wade.
It's parody. Parody.
Now this one is the most convincing.
No way.
As in most convincing that it's satire, not.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to say.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't seen you TikTok dancing your way through Roe v. Wade in the office, so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were people doing TikTok dances to save Ukraine, though, weren't there?
I think so.
I think that
and
was
there were
genuine.
definitely TikTok dances throughout COVID.
Yes, they are insufferable. If you partake in them,
you're a bad person.
Yes.
You should
perhaps
not
even
dance.
worse.
Indeed. Dancing is for the masses. Is lowbrow.
Yes. So, moving on to another one. It's time for the castle doctrine to protect abortion rights, which is a weird sort of juxtaposed.
Again, like roll the dice. Topic 1, castle doctrine. Topic 2, abortion rights.
And the final one, mass shootings have a race and a political party. And of course, they're trying to put this on the Republicans, they say. It's obvious to everyone what is happening. Senator Joe Manchin is twiddling his thumbs while young white and Latinx males are violently lashing out in response to loss of control in a culture musically and sexually dominated by black folks. Hip black folks at that.
Damn.
This is the black century and the incels can't handle it.
Wow.
Now, this has got to be genuine, surely. I'm sure people have said stuff like this before.
Oh, absolutely.
But then, yes, it muddying the water somewhat. You've got articles that I found genuinely interesting. So there's Unraveling the Mystery of Shakespeare's Second Best Bed, which he gave to his wife. But it basically explains that he was estranged from his wife, didn't really get along well with her, and that's why he left his second best bed and most of the stuff to his kids.
So that's actual content?
Yes.
Wow.
And there's also a really long article talking about North Sentinel Island, and it's titled North Sentinel Island Inside the Home of the Last Uncontacted People, which is about 2,000 words long.
Wow.
So it's not just someone messing about. There's some real stuff here, veiling the more weird and unusual stuff. So what do you reckon? I think, are you unconvinced it's genuine?
Well, I don't know that the entire site has to be genuine or parody. I think what we have here is a mix. I think there's going to... So first of all, if they're just taking submissions from writers and then publishing them without author attribution, then yeah, it could absolutely be a total mix of nonsense. People gaming the system, being like, hey, I bet I can do one that's more extreme than your smell the poop article and so on. It could be that, while there are also a few genuine writers who are submitting articles to them to boost their profile and so on, without knowing the other rubbish it's being published alongside. So I don't think it's going to be 100% one thing or the other.
Of course.
But I think it's strongly... I think they probably have one or two contributors who are prolific hoaxers.
Yes, and I think I agree with you on that, to be honest. As much as I'd like to believe it's real. However, whether it's real or not doesn't really matter for our political ends.
No.
Because we can use this to muddy the water and have a bit of fun. Spread these articles around, try and get real progressives to start believing this stuff. And it'll be funny to hear them parroting, yes, you need to smell your poop to be inclusive for trans people.
Share the articles on social media and see if you can reel any fish there.
So yes, something a bit more lighthearted, but also containing some important advice about how to conduct yourself in politics to actually get good results and maybe even have a bit of fun whilst you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching this segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that and would like to find more, you can subscribe and check out our premium content at lotuseaters.com. For instance, there's been a recent Contemplations, the newest one, What Makes Good Art Part 2, between Josh and John. If you're interested in following Josh on social media, you can find him on Getter at Josh_firm. Thank you and goodbye.